Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 22nd episode of our podcast. I'm thrilled to have Gabriela and Cindy Lora-Renard as my guests today. Gary is best-selling author of The Disappearance of the Universe, Your Immortal Reality, Love Has Forgotten No One, and The Lives When Jesus and Buddha Knew Each Other. Wayne Dyer wrote of Gary Renard's Disappearance of the Universe, "This is a book that is destined to be one of the most significant contributions to spiritual literature in this century." The message in Gary Renard's Disappearance of the Universe is one of great importance to the health and healing of ourselves and our planet. The Lives When Jesus and Buddha Knew Each Other is also a true masterpiece. I don't know of any other book that comes as close to speaking in the clearest of terms about the truth of who we are and what is our purpose here. Cindy is also a best-selling author, a spiritual counselor, and a musician. She wrote Spiritual Coupling, a guidebook for experiencing a holy relationship. Heaven is Now, The Business of Forgiveness, and A Course in Health and Well-Being. Her books are transformational and seed foundational principles of good health and well-being. Cindy and Gary traveled all over the world to introduce A Course in Miracles and speak about the importance of the mind in health and healing and how our thinking has a profound effect on every aspect of how we experience our lives. In this episode, we talk about how our good intention, spiritual faith, and goodness are a great step in the direction of health and healing, but how discipline of the mind and its choices play a fundamental role in how consistent we experience peace above all else as we move through life with or without an illness. We talk about not confusing spiritual attainment for an upper hand on our body's ability to heal or die, and how choosing to recognize ourselves in others and seeing everything with spiritual sight is the guiding light to experiencing peace, true health, and healing, and the healing thought process we want to attain. This is the second episode in which my husband also joins me. Dr. Rob Rutledge is a practicing oncologist and associate professor of medicine in Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada. Rob, Cindy, Gary, and I are good friends and chosen family and recently spent a wonderful holiday here in Nova Scotia. I love seeing our excitement and talking about how can we adopt an attitude of true health and healing where we keep our eyes on recognizing the nature of who we are in each other and choose not to flicker from the truth of who we really are and the permanence of the truth that sustains it. Please join us as we welcome Cindy and Gary Renard to our open conversation. Welcome, everyone. Cindy and Gary, it's so beautiful to have you here. Thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to see you again and learn from you directly. Our listeners love hearing from you. And I'm particularly happy about today's topic because we're hoping to talk about this, differentiation between what you do in your mind, which is not a badge of honor, which is your practice of forgiveness, intricate to life and living, because why else are we here? And to also talk about the practicalities of, hey, you think you're here and there are some cause and effects at this level. So how do you balance the two? So it's going to be really good. Just before we get going, I'm going to start with Rob. So Rob is joining me again for our listeners. My husband, he's an oncologist here in Nova Scotia, and he treats pediatrics, breast and prostate cancer. You've been doing that for over 25 years. Mm-hmm. What the listeners don't know about you, because I didn't have a chance to interview you yet.
Right.
35 years ago, he's a medical student. Listen to this, Cindy and Gary. And he gets a copy of A Course in Miracles. He hides it in a brown paper bag, okay, because he doesn't want people to know he's reading the
I was
course.
actually tree planting at the time, and so I didn't want my tree planting fellows to know that this guy's in like some wacky stuff. So
Yeah.
So he takes the book and he goes up north in Ontario, planting trees and reading the book back to back. He does all the lessons. Then, of course, he goes to medical school. He finishes medical school. He becomes a practicing oncologist. And I come in his life. And we do now daily the course. We talk with one another. We don't wear the course as a badge of honor for the most part, except for those podcasts. Nobody really knows what's happening. But at home we do, and we share with each other in this journey, right? So I'm going to start with you. What question do you have for Cindy and Gary, just to get us started?
Well, it's probably going to be long-winded because I want to kind of set this up as well. So my father grew up in a very hyper-religious family. So he rebelled against religion and really screened or shielded his kids from religion. So I grew up essentially in an atheist house. And as, 19, 20-year-old man, I was like scientist, like atheist type thing. But God had a different journey for me. And I was always interested in this kind of deeper purpose and so on. And so I started to read this kind of various religions and so on. And so thankfully, the course found me. And I did those workbook practices every day diligently, like perfectly through there. And that was right through medical school as well, right? And so like having little pieces of paper in your pocket and trying to like make sure you're doing the lessons every day. But I really knew, basically, I did not understand what the course was talking about. And so first of all, I just want to say, Gary, Cindy, thank you so much for joining us, because I really feel like I'm a novice, big picture, even though we have these ongoing conversations. I'm really looking forward to talking to you and asking you these things, and recognizing that my perceptions are kind of limited because I don't have, your background and your expertise and so on. So I'll put that way. And so I'm going to introduce some ideas, and you may not agree with what I'm saying, and it's totally fine that we're going to kind of go back and forth, and I'll learn. And that's why I'm excited to learn from you. So first of all, intuitively understand that this is an illusion, or you could say it's a perception, however you want to kind of frame it for the listeners out there, and that we can kind of let go of it. It's all an illusion, so we don't have to get kind of too wrapped up in the details. So I want to kind of put that as a starting point. However, it seems that we have this perception that we go through lifetimes, that there's this issue of reincarnation, and it seems like we continue to learn and we continue to grow. And one of the great things is we're all going to get there. Like, we're all going to make the maturity, that level, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know exactly what the lessons are. But anyways, that's my preliminary. So it seems to me like, and I'm going to kind of quote Ken Wapnick. He says, it's as if you're kind of working your way up the ladder, maybe even a spiritual ladder. I hate to kind of put a kind of a judgment on that, but we kind of progress as we're going through the lifetimes. We're learning the lessons. We're kind of making our awareness, et cetera, et cetera. And when you get really near the top of the ladder, you recognize that there was no ladder at all. Like, you can just like let go of the ladder. But in the meantime, the perception is that we can kind of go up this ladder and continue to learn and so on. So that's the first question to you guys is, does that fit with your model? And one of the things is that you can't jump, steps in the ladder. You kind of have to kind of go through your maturation, kind of almost like it's as if it's a chronological experience. I'll stop there because I got lots of questions around this.
Would you like me to go?
Sure.
Okay. First of all, that is a great question. And a lot of people ask that question in different ways. So that means it's an important question that's on a lot of people's minds. And it's important to understand about level confusion in the course, because I want to just set the stage a little bit before I answer your question. That the course speaks to us on two levels. And there's the metaphysical level, which is the level of reality, which is the level that only God is real, and anything that can shift or change or take on a form of any kind would be an illusion. So Jesus, who's the voice of A Course in Miracles, explains to us in the course that he's helping us make a clear distinction between reality and illusion. So he speaks to us in A Course in Miracles in a way we can accept and understand. And so he uses language, terminology, ways of communicating. Sometimes it sounds as if he's contradicting himself in the course, but what he's really addressing, he's addressing all of us at the level of the mind, and not because the course is not about the world and the body. It's about a change of mind and a change of what we are using the purpose of the world for. So you were speaking about the ladder. I'm glad you brought up Ken Wapnick, because I think it's always nice to honor Ken Wapnick because he is and will continue to be, I have no doubt, the greatest Course in Miracles teacher. And he remained uncompromising in the teachings. We'd like to say that we do too. We do remain uncompromising with what it says, and we always will. In regards to the latter, there is something to be said about at this level, we are learning lessons. We are learning our lessons of forgiveness. And as we practice true forgiveness, we are, in a sense, what that means is we're learning to choose the Holy Spirit as our teacher instead of the ego. Now, the latter, the ego, which is the idea of separation, the idea that we believe we've separated from God, from that reality the Course is talking about. The ego let us down, the Course describes, like this ladder, right? Now, once we are aware that we are minds first and foremost and not bodies, we're decision-making minds, and we can choose either the Holy Spirit as our teacher or the ego, which are mutually exclusive thought systems. When we start learning that we have an inner teacher, the Holy Spirit, we can now start climbing back up the ladder as a metaphor, but with the Holy Spirit holding our hand as our teacher instead of the ego. We're climbing up the ladder, knowing that we have a choice, and we get to choose either the Holy Spirit's interpretation of what's happening in our lives, what's happening personally, professionally, just the stories of our scripts, the stories of our lives. We're decision makers. We get to decide who we're thinking with as we move up, back up the ladder the ego let us down. And if we're going up the ladder with the Holy Spirit, or some people, Holy Spirit and Jesus are interchangeable. Jesus is a manifestation of the Holy Spirit. He remains a symbol in this world of the Holy Spirit. So a lot of people like to use Jesus as the Holy Spirit. Some people say Holy Spirit, but it's really the same thing. So we're learning lessons here, yes. And the thing about the Course is it saves us time, it says. And what that means is when we are practicing true forgiveness, as discussed in the Course, the Holy Spirit is in charge of time and space, and it can do what it calls collapse time for us. In other words, as we're learning our lessons of forgiveness, I'm doing more and more guilt, which the Course says is really our only cause of suffering, is this idea that we're guilty over this idea that we've separated from God. Once we work with healing that through true forgiveness, and we're really undoing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, we're undoing that guilt, the Holy Spirit, which Jesus, Holy Spirit, is in charge of, can do what they call collapse time, which means we might appear to skip some steps. So it's not necessarily chronological in the sense that everything is predetermined, because we have like a multiple choice script. There are different and possible and different scenarios that can play out according to the choices we're making in our minds. And sometimes we can kind of skip over. We might be able to skip over some experiences we might have had if we weren't practicing forgiveness that might have caused us a little more pain and suffering, because we've learned our lessons. So this is how the Holy Spirit can collapse time, and it might appear as if, well, we don't need that particular lesson anymore, so we kind of move up the ladder a little more.
Makes sense.
And so I don't want to keep going on and on without letting Gary have a chance, but I wanted to set the stage a little bit for what this means about the ladder and about what we're actually doing when we're going back up the ladder.
Absolutely. And to expound on what Cindy is saying, right away, you have two different things going on. You have your life, your everyday life. You have your goals, your dreams, your things that you want to do, your relationships. It's all there right in front of you, and you're not going to get away from it. It's going to be there as long as you appear to be here. And that's your life. And your life is what happens. It's like a movie script. It's what happens in the movie. You live it, you stick to the script, and that's fine. Then you have the way that you're looking at your life. You have your thoughts about your life. And it's actually a very natural progression to do A Course in Miracles, because people are thinking about their lives anyway. They already have two different things going on. They already have their life going on, and they already have their thoughts about it. And they think that those thoughts are private because people can't see them. And so they'll think any damn thing they want to think about that life that they're living and the people in it and the world that they appear to be living in. And that will go on. What A Course in Miracles does is it gives you a way of changing your mind. And unless you choose to share it with people, nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to see this, because A Course in Miracles itself is always done at the level of the mind. And what it is A course in mind training. And it gives you a thought system. And I cannot possibly overestimate how important it is to have a thought system, because people don't realize that the mind is very mechanical. It's a survival machine. And if you don't train it, it'll run wild like an animal. And we see that on the TV news every night, and we see it everywhere in the world. All this reaction, all of this, people bouncing off each other and their reactions and everything. And it's very automatic. And it's all based on separation and survival. And what Course in Miracles does is it gives you a new way of looking at everything. And it doesn't try to interfere with your life. You may choose as you go along to make changes in your life, but those changes are based on a thought system that is mirroring the thought system of the Holy Spirit, which we will call it the Holy Spirit, as opposed to the thought system of what we'll call the ego, which is based on separation. So you got two different ways of looking at the movie. It's still the same movie. It's like you're in a movie theater, and you got a guy sitting on the right of you and a guy sitting on the left of you, and the guy on the right of you is giving you a certain interpretation of the movie that you're watching, and the guy on the left of you is giving you a different interpretation of the movie that you're watching. Now, it's the same movie. It hasn't changed. If you're in a movie theater with 50 people, you probably got 50 different movies going on there, because everybody has their own way of looking at it and interpreting it and thinking of it. And what A Course in Miracles does is it gives you an interpretation that is provided to you by what we'll call Spirit or the Holy Spirit. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but it's the right part of your mind that is based on love and forgiveness. And it's a certain kind of forgiveness. And everybody has access to that. Everybody has the Holy Spirit. Everybody has a right mind. A Course in Miracles says all are called, but few choose to listen. So the question is, are you going to listen to the Holy Spirit in your mind, or are you just going to go along with the ego and keep judging things and living your life the same way that most people do? And you can't blame them, because it's all that they know. So you certainly can't judge them for that. And, you can just go along like that, or you can change your mind. And by changing your mind, it leads to a totally different world, literally. Not that the movie is changing, but your experience of it will change, because as you change the interpretation of the movie, your experience will start to change, because it's what you believe in that affects you. And if you believe in this world, and as Jesus would say 2,000 years ago, if you invest in this world and build up your fortune in this world, well, it's going to be gone sooner or later, possibly sooner. And at the other hand, if you build up your treasure in your mind and in heaven, as he called it then and now, then the irony is you can have both. You can have those dreams and that treasure, but you know that it's temporary. So you know that it's not reality, that you can only put a very limited amount of faith in that, because it's not going to be there. And instead, you begin to put your faith into something that will always be there, something that is constant, something that doesn't shift or change. And you can do both at the same time. There is definitely an art to it, but it's something that you learn as you go along, where you can live your life and you can still practice the kind of forgiveness that is taught in A Course in Miracles, which we'll get to eventually.
Wow. Major download. Thank you. That was wonderful. And just I'll also reflect on Cindy's answer as well, so that just so the listeners understand my perspective as well, is that I do pray every morning, and I pray every morning that Holy Spirit guides me, and I ask to be a servant to something higher than myself, and to be, I mean, and then I bring it in the values of my life is I want to be helpful to people. I want to be compassionate in whatever way possible. So I'm with you, Cindy, is like the Holy Spirit's going to guide me up the ladder at whatever pace is going to happen. And I'm going to let go of the outcome.
And I really like the latter thing that you're saying, because, as you go on this journey, you can, we are where we are at. There's no point in me, if I'm, say, for example, hypothetically speaking, on grade 12 to try to drag a grade 8er, onto grade 12. No, come with me. But look, see. No, that's where they're at. And that's perfect. And that's where I'm at. And sometimes we might think we're in grade 12 and we're actually in grade 6.
That's right.
And
right.
yeah, we all bounce around too. You're not
So
all
beautiful.
There you go. And it's, in some sense, I was just reading overall. If you want a relaxation experience, folks, I was just like reading all the workbook lessons all in a row over about 20 minutes. It was like, that feels so good just to read.
Well, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was looking for, in what ways does the course kind of point us towards our relationships and how we look at our brothers, how we treat our brothers. So that was the kind of the overlap that I wanted to explore with you guys as well right now, because I totally understand there's the world, it's the kind of the life, the movie, and I realize there's what I would call observer consciousness, and which is puts us very, very close to God, as we kind of get up on that side. But there's obviously in some ways, the course can help direct us as to how we want to look at other people and other situations. And that will actually influence our relationships as well. So maybe I'll make that the easier question first is, is there an influence there of practicing? I really like to use the word practice because I keep flipping in and out and good moments, bad moments, and all that stuff, but practicing to remember the right mind and so on.
We'll both address this.
We'll
both address this.
Because it's very interesting, because A Course in Miracles, as you know, is a very metaphysical thing. I mean, it is more out there. It's probably the most radical teaching ever given, in my opinion. And it is so radical and so metaphysical. People will wonder at first, well, how on earth can you do that and still live your life? And as I was saying earlier, the transition is actually pretty practical, because you're going to be thinking anyway. So all you're doing is changing your thoughts, which is why the Course itself says, seek not to change the world, seek rather to change your mind about the world. So as you go along, you can live your life. It's just you're being influenced by a different thought system now, and that will definitely affect every relationship that you have, whether it's a personal relationship or a work relationship. And a lot of work relationships, as everyone knows, can be very adversarial and very competitive, and not always very friendly. And the two people who were first given A Course in Miracles were in that kind of a situation, where they had a difficult working situation and personal situation. And slowly but surely, because they asked for it, they were given a better way to live in this relationship. And that's how the Course originated. It was about slowly getting around to thinking like the Holy Spirit, instead of thinking about the ego, which, because it's based on separation, will have all of these judgments and eventually conflict. The ego, which, will kind of like anthropomorphize the ego and say that it loves the idea of separation and conflict, because it likes this game of separation and wants to keep it going, likes to have separate bodies, separate relationships. And what the Holy Spirit wants is for us to shift to a condition of oneness. Now, that may sound kind of like a hairy-fairy and kind of woo-woo to some people, the idea of oneness. And yet the reason that A Course in Miracles is the spirituality of the future is because it is in harmony with the new physics and the new science, which teaches that there's not really any such thing as separation. It just looks that way. So we are confronted with something that looks like separation every moment of our lives. And because it's all we know, we accept it as reality. But what the Course is saying is no, that's an illusion. What you're seeing is not true. And a quantum physicist today will tell you the same thing, that, yeah, it may look like it's all separate, but you can't really separate anything from anything else. Even, a butterfly in China has some influence on us here in Hollywood, and you can't get away from that. So the Course, instead of denying that, embraces it and uses it. And the old-fashioned kind of spiritual thinking, even if it's forgiveness, it's an old-fashioned way because it's making separation real. It's making the subject and the object real. It's making us separate from each other. A Course in Miracles undoes that and turns it into oneness. So it turns out that the way that you think about somebody else is actually just going to you. That whatever you think about somebody else is influencing you and how you feel about yourself and about what your identity is. And the reason that people will stick with something like this, because it doesn't look like there's a practical reason at first. The reason that people stick with something like A Course in Miracles is because it starts to change their experience. And it starts to change their experience of life. And after a while, they may realize, hey, you know what? There's really something to this because I feel different. I feel better. I'm happier. I'm more peaceful. I'm looking at things differently. And those are the kinds of questions we should ask ourselves as you go along with the Course. Am I becoming more peaceful? People always ask, how do I know I'm making progress with the Course? That's how you know. Am I more peaceful, more loving, more kind? Am I less reactionary? And that in turn affects everything about you, your health. It affects the way that you think. It affects problem solving because you can think more clearly when you're at peace. So as A Course in Miracles says, a tranquil mind is not a little gift. It's a big gift. So in the end, it kind of ironically becomes very practical, and it can lead to some very good things, even in the solution of a world.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, very well said. And I do have some things to add about this, about relationships. I just wanted to share, I did write a book on relationships called Spiritual Coupling,
Nice.
a guidebook for experiencing a holy relationship. But I don't want people to get confused and think this is only about romantic relationships. The content in my book can be applied to any relationship, because A Course in Miracles, and when it comes to relationships, always asks us, what are they for? What's the purpose? As our minds start to get more aware that we're choosing, and we always have a choice in we're perceiving someone, anybody in our lives. It could be a coworker, it could be a family member, it could be a friend, doesn't matter who it is. It could be what you think of as a stranger in an elevator. The content is always the same of how you're perceiving that person. This is the Course's focus. How do we make a relationship that's been used for the ego's purpose? We usually default to the ego, but transform that into a holy relationship, regardless if it's someone you've just met for 1 minute or someone you've known for years, your entire lifetime. The question comes down to, what is it for? What is the purpose? So we want to come to purpose. If we're using relationships for the Holy Spirit's purpose, we're going to start to train our minds to think differently about people, no matter who they are to us, what they mean to us. We're going to start practicing seeing them with spiritual sight, which means your body's eyes will always see bodies. You're going to see people, physical people, but it's the way you're thinking about them that matters. Are you seeing with spiritual sight, which means you're overlooking their form past the body and thinking of them as they really are in truth. They are perfect spirit, whole and innocent. And this can be relatable to your work as doctors too. But you do your normal work, right, with patients. You don't give up your normal jobs, your normal relationships. You live your normal life, meaning you're going to do what you would normally do. The Course is just addressing at the level of mind of how you're thinking about the people. In other words, like you could be normal and talk to a patient, you know, you're going through different forms of treatment with them, what things are possible with them, but in your mind, you know that they're whole, they're perfect spirit, whole and innocent, as you're working, doing your normal job, you know, taking care of what needs to be taken care of. To come back to the mind is to say, but I know who they really are. They're whole in truth. That's the course's focus, is how we're seeing, really how we're thinking about them.
You know what? I just want to interrupt right there, because
it really strikes a chord with you,
it's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
It makes my job 100 times easier, right? I still have to make the technically right decisions in terms of giving the best treatment possible. I still need to understand their personalities to be able to serve them in whatever way, communicate whatever ways possible. And some of them are going to die. 50% of my patients are going to die in the shorter than longer term. And I've had some really sad cases recently. But the understanding that they are not their bodies and not their personalities, and that we're kind of together in this, it makes such a huge difference as an oncologist to know that and to be able to resonate with that. And honestly, I think, so what happened to me, I'll just give you a little bit of the backstory, is that I decided that whenever I was going to break bad news to a patient, I was not going to run away, right? Because it's pretty easy to come in to the young mom. She's got young kids. Now the cancer spread to her brain. I'm sorry, you've got cancer spread to your brain. We're going to have to give you some treatment. Your life is going to be shortened, and then kind of run out the door. Instead, I just sat there and I just stayed with whatever was going to come up. And yes, I was uncomfortable. But yes, I was feeling sad. I was feeling stressed, and sometimes at the point of tears, et cetera, et cetera. But I decided to stay. And, you know, that kind of the emotions, the negative emotions around that kind of burned off. And yes, I do tear up a little bit these days, but it's almost as if I could start perceive something deeper, right, within this relationship, and they could perceive that they were also perceiving something different, you know. So all to say is, it's changed my job, is to be able to say that I'm watching a movie and that we're actually connected at a bigger level, the two of us, as we're going through this journey together. So,
and Rob, I'm going to add to that, because I've witnessed you over the past couple of years, and I think in many ways, you reading the course 35 plus years ago something has stayed with, there are seeds that have stayed with you, because now when you come home after seeing a difficult case like that, minds are joined. We always join. And that moment that you had with a patient, in which you did, interests were not separate. That's the true connection. That's the mind connection that you're talking about. We do that with ourselves, as if now I'm doing it with you, and with that moment where you were with the patient. So that really has percolated in our lives even deeper now that, you know, we are in relationship together. But I think has been there with you throughout your life, whether you realize it or not. Because even when I came to know you, that was there already. Me talking about my own spiritual journey and the course and what has meant for me in my life has only met you at the right time in the right place. And maybe ignited something that was seated within you for a long time, I think.
Yeah, and not to, you know, to minimize this, to say that I don't feel like the pain of the circumstance. It's there's still some emotion there. Maybe I'm getting to be a bit more hard-assed. Oops, can you say that in a podcast? As I'm like coming up to 60 years old. But I'm
gonna have to cut that.
No, it's just, you know, I mean, the emotional energy is going to run through me in the same way. Whatever's happening is happening. I'm not changing the movie in some sense, but there is a different perception there.
And the course says, I mean, don't deny it. That's a particularly unworthy form of denial, to deny your reaction, your responses to things. It's what it is. Okay, then work with it at the level of mind. Go through whatever it is, the emotion. In Gary's book, I think Artner Persa says, you know, somebody tries to rape you, kick them in the balls. Oops, I shouldn't have said that either. And then you do your forgiveness thing in the mind, and it doesn't have to be done then, or when, you know, and the person doesn't even have to be there.
That's not the quotation I would choose to introduce to my teachers. But what they're saying is that there are those two different levels that you start off by talking about. You got the level of your life where you got to remember how to be normal.
Right. And I want to get to this. This is really important. This is where we're going, hopefully.
Right. And yeah, you can do the course at the same time. And, you know, it doesn't mean that you're a doormat, and it doesn't mean that if you're out there on the street and somebody begins to attack you, you don't start quoting that workbook lesson from A Course in Miracles. If I defend myself, I'm attacked, because you might be dead in a few seconds.
Yep.
So what you do is you do the practical thing, and then maybe if you hadn't had time to think about it, maybe later you'll apply whatever you learned from the course to that situation, because you don't always have time to think. But A Course in Miracles promises you that if you're in an emergency, and if you've been working with the Holy Spirit and using the Holy Spirit's thought system, then it says in the Manual for Teachers that wisdom will be given to you when you need it. So even in an emergency, that thought system will kick in and tell you the right thing to do. And whatever it is, it will inspire peace.
Wonderful. Because okay, so you're really kind of clearing up my confusions around this. So I really do appreciate this conversation then. Because I'm hearing Ken Wapnick say, be normal, like go and have your life and, you know, buy house insurance and medical insurance. And like, you know, we have to plan for the future and, you know, do all those normal things. However, you can still tap into a higher wisdom on the day-to-day. And so therefore, when they talk about judgment, you know, it's or forgiveness has a different connotation within the course. I understand that. And maybe because some listeners wouldn't have heard this, the difference between kind of forgiveness at the level of the world and kind of forgiveness from course perspective or metaphysical perspective, maybe a quick summary there for people not to get confused here.
Yeah.
Before I just want to say one thing about that. The kind of forgiveness that's in A Course in Miracles is based on oneness. Once again, that's why I was saying earlier that it's the spirituality of the future. So to, you know, kind of like go into that just a little bit more deeply, the truth is, even though it looks like there are 8 billion of us, there's only one of us. It's what the Hindus called the one appearing as many. And because there's only one of us, there's only one mind, which Carl Jung was correct about. He called it the collective unconscious. If you could get down deep enough into that mind, you would find that there's only one of us. There's only one mind, the one appearing as many. And what that means, because of the way that the mind works, and by the way, A Course in Miracles has a very important law of the mind that it articulates that is based on oneness. It says, as you see him, you will see yourself. And it must be pretty important, because then it says, never forget this. You know, in that person, you will either find yourself or lose yourself, which is why every single thing that you think about another person or anything in the world, a situation, an event, your personal relationships, your work relationships, every single thing that you think about another person is really just going to you, because your unconscious mind, which you can't see, but which the Holy Spirit can see, will interpret it to be about you, because it knows that there's really just one of us. You can't see it, but your unconscious mind knows everything. And it will interpret anything you think about somebody else to really be about you. And once you really get that, I would think that you would get pretty damn careful about the way you think about other people.
Yeah.
Got to bleep that one out too.
Yeah.
No, you can say damn. There's only one word now you can't say. And that's the F word, which we don't say. So
we must be cussing A Course in Miracles.
no.
We're all.
No, you can even use the S word in spiritual presentations now, so that's okay.
Yeah.
But it's like once you understand that, it gives you power, and you can't get away from it. And like you know, I got angry. You know, as a personal example, I got angry at Putin when he invaded Ukraine.
Well, I wanted to ask about Putin, because this is important.
And my first reaction.
It's all important.
Yeah, and none of it is.
And, none of it.
None of it is exactly.
And Putin, okay, my first reaction is that son of a bitch. And you know, I think he should be hanged for war crimes when I saw him bombing civilians the way that he was. And then I realized, wait a minute, if I think that he's an idiot and stupid, I'm really just calling myself an idiot and saying that I'm stupid. And it gets worse, because 3 days from now, 5 days from now, I will feel stupid. I will feel depressed. It'll come out different, but any kind of a negative feeling that you have actually came about because of thoughts that you were having earlier. That's why thoughts are so important. People don't realize they're setting themselves up for the way that they're going to feel, whether they're going to be happy or whether they're going to be depressed. Everything is being determined by them and nobody else. Is being determined right now. So I caught myself and I said, okay, I wanted my stupidity and all the negative things that I secretly believed about myself, which of course in Miracles calls the secret sins and hidden hates that you really have about yourself, that you have denied and projected outward and chosen to see in all these people on the screen that you made up, that you forgot that you made up. And the way to be free of it is to not judge it and to not make it real and to think differently. So I can now think of, okay, that thing over there, that image that thinks that it's Vladimir Putin is not, that person is not a body. That person is actually a divine creation of God. And if I think about them that way, if I think about the truth by overlooking the illusion and looking past it to the truth about that person, then that is how I will come to experience myself. I will experience myself as a divine, perfect, innocent creation of God. But the only way to do it, because of the way that the mind works, is to give it away, to give it to everybody. So the Course says to have all, give all to all, without exception.
That's God's economy for you.
There it is. Cindy, do you want to comment as well? You sound like you wanted to jump in there for a moment. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to make a clear that there is a distinction between having an opinion and judgment, and then judging. It's perfectly normal to have an opinion about and disagree with someone. The Course is not saying we're not going to disagree or we have to agree with everyone all the time and what they're doing and the decisions they're making. So there's a very important distinction there. You can have an opinion, raise your voice, in other words, express yourself, yet in your mind, you're not judging the person. Because the Course explains there's only two forms of expression. And this is what helps me in my everyday life. And practically applying A Course in Miracles in my everyday life is always remembering the following. There's only two forms of expression. People are either calling for love or they're expressing love. Now, if we remember that, it's going to be pretty clear who's calling for love, calling for help, because they're going to act out in vicious ways. They're going to write and send. It doesn't look pretty. It could affect millions of people. But they're still saying, it's like they're saying in their mind, the underlying content is, I've lost God, I've lost myself. I don't know what to, I've lost who I am. I need help. They don't realize that that's what they're doing, but that's what they're doing.
They're unconscious,
yeah. So the Course is explaining, if we understand that's what's happening, the proper and appropriate response would be love to that in some way. Some expression of love that might look like you're just how you're thinking of the person, remembering who they really are. They're not that person that's calling for war in the world. They're not even a person. They're still the Christ, as all of us, as one. We're all the same. In other words, we're all come from the same loving God. We all have an ego part of our mind that makes poor decisions. We all have the Holy Spirit. But if we see it that way, it helps us come back to our center and choose the Holy Spirit.
Agreed. I
just want to make the point, doesn't mean we're not going to be normal and have opinions, and you don't have to agree with everybody. You can even say, I understand that's your opinion, but I have an opinion too.
Yeah.
But you're not judging. There's a difference. In other words, thinking of them as less than.
Agreed. Yeah, we're in this together, and we're just all the same in some sense, ego and et cetera, et cetera. And Jerry, I do want to clarify, though, that we would still want to fight the war against Russia in this unjust situation. We would still want to prosecute Putin according to law, but we can still do that while understanding that he's a human like the rest of us and in need of love like the rest of us. Is that right? Am I being too, have I simplified this too much?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, we don't have to worry about Putin being hanged because they don't allow the death penalty in the European Union. So he's already going to get off scot-free there. But I think that when it comes to whether or not you participate in a war, this is where the Holy Spirit comes in. You get your guidance or by asking for it. ask and ye shall receive. You ask the Holy Spirit what the best course of action is for you. So I don't make decisions on my own. I look back on my life when it was really going down the toilet, and I realized that there was only one person who was always there, and it was me. And it was my decisions that resulted in the pain. And when I started to listen to the Holy Spirit, and you kind of like look in your mind for that idea to come to you from the Holy Spirit, and you even get to the point where you can feel it. And sometimes I have more specific guidance, but that's a whole other subject of how people get their guidance from the Holy Spirit. But it's all the Holy Spirit. And the thing is, when I started to listen to the Holy Spirit, I started to become more peaceful because I was more relaxed. I started to think more clearly, and generally good things started to happen for me in my life. That's not what the course is about. What I'm saying is, and you can see this in the Song of Prayer section of the course, it happens naturally. There's the song of God, the song of love, which is love. And then there's the after effects, the overtones, the harmonics. And that is the guidance that you receive from the Holy Spirit that can lead you to some very good things in this world.
Wonderful.
And just to comment a little bit on what you said earlier, Gary, interesting about this idea of the world I see is the outer picture of an inward condition. So it's really all about, you were talking earlier, that there's just one split mind. There's only one of us, right?
Well, Gabriela, that's why my teachers taught in the first book that the people of the world will never live in peace until the people of the world have inner peace. If you change that inner condition, the outer picture will change, but not until then. And so the world will keep trying to find peace out there on the screen where it can't work. And if you look at the history of the last 10,000 years, you can pretty much define it as one war after another, after another, after another, after another, after another, ad nauseum. And that's just the last 10,000 years. I'm sure it goes back a lot further.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's like, that's what we do. That is the ego, that is conflict. And what A Course in Miracles does is it addresses the problem where the problem really is, which is within the mind. That's where the problem needs to be fixed, whether it's personal or whether it's a global phenomenon.
And that's the way to permanence, because the world is impermanent. And we were talking just before we started the podcast about this, just how impermanent everything is. And
like the Maui fires, right? Because we were
everything, the wars, the situation in the US, China, everywhere, no matter where Europe, wherever you go in the world, there is some conflict going on. And there you have it. The nature of impermanent is good, is really good. Oh, it's fantastic. It's shitty, it's really bad. And it goes back and forth, right? And so there's our ticket to permanence. So and this is, I think, so pertinent to everybody in the world right now, because we're also drawn into those political fires, and political viewpoints. So how do you find peace amidst all this? How do you go above the battleground? The only way is through your mind.
Your mind.
The observer's mind, like you said, Gary, everybody is observing themselves thinking, and that's a step in the right direction. You do that, and then ask you, who's doing the thinking? Is there another way? Can I actually choose right now to think differently? And what happens? Because it's that experience that will reinforce us choosing the right mind, choosing to see the permanence and the reality in all that there is, rather than the opposite of it.
Beautifully said. I love to add a very powerful quote in A Course in Miracles. It says, talks about the secret of salvation. It says, the secret of salvation is but this: you're doing this to yourself. No matter what form of attack, how vicious an attack may be, you wouldn't react at all to figures in a dream. You knew that you were dreaming. Let them be as hateful and as vicious as they may. They could have no effect on you unless you fail to recognize it's your dream. Now, that is not an easy one to practice, but this is a literal statement. This is a definitive statement. This is why A Course in Miracles can be so hard, so tricky sometimes, and hard to practice, because it's basically saying everything that we're seeing with our body's eyes is occurring in the mind. It's our dream. And not only that, it's my dream that I'm having. There's only one of us. So we think of it, Course is asking us to think of it as I'm the dreamer of my dream. All the figures I'm making them act out for me in my dream. Just like we do in bed at night. Who's dreaming the dream in bed at night? And you're seeing all, right? You're in bed at night. You're having a dream. You're laying safe in your bed. Your eyes are closed. You're seeing and making up all the images while your eyes are closed. You're peopling your dreams, with all the different people, right? You are making them act out for you. Then you wake up and you go, oh, thank God, usually as just a dream. And then here Jesus is saying, well, you're waking up to another form of dreaming. We're still dreaming, and we're still now, instead of in the bed, we're at home in God, having this dream that we appear to be awake, but it's still another form of dreaming. So the whole goal is, the secret of salvation is that if I am reacting to an event in the world, I still want to come back to the mind where cause is, because the Course is about cause and effect, right? And it could be called the Course in cause and effect, actually. Cause is always mind, world is effect. So the world is a screen we're projecting on. So nothing's really happening on the screen. So if it's happening in our mind, we again get to choose again how we're interpreting wars, famine, illnesses, relationship issues, financial issues. The Course puts it all in the same pool of no hierarchy of illusions. It's all one pool of illusion. And then there's one absolute truth that has nothing to do with this pool of illusion, of all this stuff that we make orders of difficulty and miracles. It says we make one problem bigger than another. And we don't have to feel guilty about that. It's saying, don't feel guilty about that, but there's a way through this and out of this. And the workbook helps us do this.
Right.
Helps us undo what we've been poorly taught. And it's not easy, and we need to have compassion for ourselves as we're learning, climbing up the ladder, practicing choosing the Holy Spirit as our teacher. And so it doesn't mean we're going to be perfect all the time. I'm not saying we're all going to be perfect. I certainly am not. We're going to have hard times. Sometimes we're going to cry. We're going to feel pain. But the day will come, the more and more we're practicing, that peace is going to start to dominate more and more as we're choosing and being vigilant only for God. Peace will come more and more, but it does take practice. And that's why we need to be non-judgmental with the self as we're going through whatever, if it's an illness, if it's any kind of problem we're having a very difficult time with. I think a key is just being able to just look as an observer, but not judge ourselves, not feel guilty about if you get sick, or it could be any kind of problem, but just go, okay, what does it mean to be a neutral observer of this? It's like you're watching yourself in the story, but you're not identified with the body as the self. That's a difference to if you're identified with the body and you think that's all you are, that's frightening. That's very frightening.
Of course, yeah.
But if you know that you are an eternal spiritual being, there's no death, you don't really die, and you always have support around you, seen and unseen forces, always there for support. You can practice that mindset. It can really help the quality of your life.
For certain.
Well, I'm glad that Cindy brought up the idea of this being hard, because it's not easy to do. A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles does not say that it's easy. It does say that it's simple, because it's telling you that there are only two things, and only one of them is real. So that at its heart is pretty simple. But is it easy to do? No, it's not easy to put into practice. At times it may seem impossible. to put it into practice. That's where the mind training of the course comes in, the workbook that you were talking about. You practice every day and you forgive the little things. You know, that's how your mind gets used to being in the habit of forgiveness. And then by forgiving every day, usually little everyday things, a time will come somewhere where something really big will happen that appears to be really big and important. And you'll be able to forgive it and you won't be upset, and you'll realize, wow, that's strange because that used to always upset me, or I would have always been upset by something like that. And all of a sudden you're not upset. And that's when you realize that really important fundamental changes have been going on in your unconscious mind as you have been practicing this.
That's wonderful. And I think, Cindy, you preempted the whole question around this issue of experiencing emotions, right? Because we, at this level, human bodies run into these psychological situations that we're projecting out that causes us to feel scared or angry or frustrated or, jealous or shameful, or like there's so many things that I can experience as an emotion, but I can allow that to happen and really focus what I call observer mind, or I guess the right mind, however you want to say. I'm seeing the story coming out. I don't have to judge myself, but I do want to choose. For me, what's important is my value is to choose how I'm going to act towards that next person, that next situation, how I'm going to respond. But the emotion is at the level of the world. I'm still seeing it, and it's okay that we're having emotions.
Yeah.
And it's actually okay that we're having joyful emotions or positive emotions too, right? But those are emotions.
Yes, that does fall into the emotional category, even though we're going to feel that, of course, because we're experiencing ourselves as humans.
Yes.
There's no way around it. We're going to feel emotions.
Yeah.
Everybody will feel emotions, and we don't have to try to repress those. In fact, it's very unhealthy to repress emotions. It's actually healthier to be totally honest with how you're feeling, so it can come to the surface, so then you can work on looking at it, and then work on releasing and forgiving. But how can we do that if we're denying repressing them, and it just festers within and manifests itself as all kinds of
negative stuff?
And I have experience with that. That's why I can talk about this. And I've been in situations where I felt terrified, crying. I was worried and anxious, and I've had body issues. And so I had to work through those the same way I teach people to. I'm like, well, what would I tell someone? What is the course telling me to do? Well, I can be an observer. I can be above the battleground and ask Jesus, the Holy Spirit, for help and seeing this with correct perception, so I can work with bringing myself back to a place of peace, regardless of what's happening with the body or with the world. That's my power. That's the power that we have, is to choose. We might not always have control over what happens in our dream movies, but we do have control over how we're thinking. We do have control. So.
I am so happy you brought up this issue, because lately I've been reflecting a lot about people that I loved in my life that are no longer with us, that were faced with terminal illness, with cancer diagnosis in particular, that were spiritually very advanced. And they made a fundamental error that we all make, and that is confusing levels, and did not seek medical attention or thought that because of their advancement, that somehow, things are going to get better. And they didn't, and we lost them. I lost them. And I think it's an important discussion to have. And of course, while understanding everything is perfect in Holy Spirit's plan of undoing this mega illusion, which never happened. But I think it's an important discussion to have. Gary and Cindy, do you have something to say about that? About this level of confusion, and how do we, is there a way to be mindful about it? Does it matter? Should we be mindful about it?
Sure. I mean, it's like we were saying earlier, don't forget how to be normal. When if I have some kind of a medical problem, and thank God I've never had a serious one, but I would go see a doctor. And I have a good doctor, and he's not into Course in Miracles, but I like him because I can tell that he cares about people, that he actually cares about his patients. And so there are good doctors and there are doctors who don't really seem to care.
Yeah, I agree.
Rob is one of the good ones. You were one of the good ones. And it's like, you can tell that they care. This guy cares. So I listen to him. I've taken his advice most of the time, and it has really helped me.
Nice.
I really wish that my parents and the generation before me had the kind of medicine that they have today, because they have medicines today that work for all of these ailments that people used to die from. And instead they could just take these pills today or an ointment or something that help so much. So, you could say that the world appears to have gotten worse, and because of duality, it certainly has in one way. And then because you also have good in the world, that's duality, good and bad, then you have these good things that have happened where people are actually living longer than they ever have in history. So, and people tend to overlook that and just look at, oh, this person died, that person died, and they forget about all the ones that lived because of the progress that's been made. And what I say is there may be a treatment out there that can help you. And what you want to do is take responsibility for your health. Find a doctor who you trust, who you like to be with, and who inspires faith in you. And that's no guarantee that everything is going to work. Nothing works all the time, and none of us are going to be here indefinitely. So what you do is you kind of like work with the Holy Spirit and ask to be guided. There's a couple of great lines in the Course. What would you have me do? And where would you have me go? What would you have me say? You can be guided by the Holy Spirit through life. And the more that you practice the kind of forgiveness that we're talking about, the more your mind is cleared out of this ego garbage and this ego clutter that's in the unconscious mind and is being replaced by spirit. And so you become more open to the Holy Spirit's guidance. And you might even become more effective at the choices that you make. And they may lead you to a treatment for your illness that you may not have gone for if you had not been practicing this way.
Yeah.
I agree with everything. How important it is to ask the Holy Spirit when you really start to become aware that there's help available, again, unseen and seen, but to also ask the unseen. Just because you can't see, everybody has spirit guides and help.
Yes.
And if you ask and sincerely, ask, I think it's different for everyone. Someone may be guided to seek a traditional form of therapy, but how do we know? We can't judge someone's path either. How do we know it's best for someone else? And what their script is, what their story is. Only the Holy Spirit can see the bigger picture. But it doesn't mean that, we shouldn't do what we can for ourselves. And that means we love ourselves. If we make a choice to do something to help ourselves, that means we're demonstrating that, wait, we care. I care about myself. I care about my well-being. What can I do that can serve me in the best possible way? And then talk with a doctor about it. I think a good doctor will listen without trying to enforce, right? Be forceful about a treatment too. It will actually, a doctor will listen to the patient, what their needs are, yet, of course, offer guidance and advice based on what you know to be helpful. But then the patient, at some point, it's the patient that heals himself ultimately, because it's the mind that decides to be well. That's a hard one for a lot of doctors, I think, to
conventional doctors,
right, to say, well, wait a minute, I'm the healer, or right. I remember Gary had a great example in one of his books, if you recall, when he had a conversation with, I like this example, with Arten Persa, when the big tsunami happened in Indonesia, and back in 2004, killed thousands of people. Maybe 400,000 people. And Gary said to Arten Persa, because he was seeing with spiritual sight and attempting to do what the Course suggests, which is remember who they really are, and there's no death, and no one's but Gary said to Arten Persa, who am I becoming if I'm not feeling that pain or
Right.
And Arten Persa said, you're becoming more peaceful person.
Mm,
And you're more effective then.
yeah, yeah.
You're more effective to help people when you're in your right mind. You're a better service to people, because we're of no service to people if we're drowning in their pain with them.
Agreed. Yeah.
There is a difference. And it doesn't mean we're going to be perfect all the time and not have emotion.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean,
But if we remember the truth, though, if we just remember
right.
the truth and go, wait a minute,
Yeah.
I can be of better service, though, if I remember,
If I stay
right?
centered,
I'm not separate from this person, and we're not
Yeah.
separate from God. It's sort of, it helps people remind them who they are.
Yeah.
When
Agreed.
when you're your true self.
Yeah.
It just helps remind people they can choose that perspective, whether their physical body heals or not is irrelevant in a way.
Yeah.
Because it's the attitude.
It's a reminder. It's a reminder of
Yeah.
the truth of
Yeah.
our oneness.
Yeah.
I present this because I've taught around this issue to different audiences. I present it in a secular fashion. So I say, on the one hand, use your logical mind. Go get the information for any specialist, whether it's conventional, naturopaths. Figure out if it makes sense logically. What's the science? What's the quality of evidence? And then I say, use your intuition, allow your intuition to guide you, which is really speak for, there's actually Holy Spirit in there that actually, and what I find miraculous is there's something within us that wants us to heal, like is driving us to heal. So it's possible it wouldn't be that way, but actually I think that's the reality, is that Holy Spirit wants us to heal our lives in some way or form. And that may result that we may not live very long or die, et cetera, but we can be healed by listening to something that's deeper within us. And then I think it's important that we practically do that we deliberately, consciously do that by asking, say, Holy Spirit, please guide me. Like there should be at least the thought, if not the words coming out to say,
totally.
I need this guidance. Please help me in whatever's best for me and everyone involved in the circumstance, for instance.
Yeah,
So
Rob, I'd like to give a quick example from my life, what we're talking about, seeking treatment.
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, I started having this very bad heartburn. And it got to the point where I almost couldn't enjoy a meal, especially at night, without suffering.
Ouch, yeah.
And it took away one of the few things in my life that I actually enjoy. And so I tried everything. I didn't try to cure it with just my mind. I certainly do treat everything with my mind, but I couldn't find anything that worked. I tried all kinds of natural remedies, anything that I could think of, anything anybody told me about, I would try it. It didn't work. I didn't want to go to a conventional doctor because I didn't really believe in them.
Yeah.
I'm asking the Holy Spirit, and the guidance was like, well, it's a doctor lives about 2 blocks from where you live. I mean, the practice is about 2 blocks from where you live. And it was in Brentwood, California. And it's like, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll try it. So I go to this doctor, I explain everything that I've tried, how it's really ruining the quality of my
your
life.
Yeah.
And he said, well, try this. He gave me a medicine. It's either omeprazole or omeprazole. I'm not sure.
Omeprazole.
So I tried, and this is the thing that you can get over the counter, but it's strong. It's not as big a dose.
Yeah.
You get it over the counter. I had already tried this by buying it over the counter. It didn't work for me. He gave me a prescription, which happened to be twice as much as what you get
strong. Yeah.
over the counter. I tried it. My heartburn was gone in 3 days, and it never came back. And that was 7 years ago. So, what I'm saying to especially the Course in Miracles students is that it's okay to seek treatment, to follow the Holy Spirit, listen to the Holy Spirit. And it's okay to try to heal your body with your mind, of course. And someday you will be able to, but maybe until you're on the level of Jesus, maybe it's not going to work all the time. Because, Jesus was at the end of his, so-called human path. And maybe we're not quite up to that level yet of being able to heal just anything. So do both. It's okay to use that compromise approach. And if you are a good student of the course, and if you look at page 25 at the beginning of the text, you'll see that it actually says that. Sometimes it may be wise to use a compromise approach. And it must be very important because you never hear A Course in Miracles use the word compromise. And yet on that page it does. And I think the reason for it is because Jesus doesn't want his students dying because they won't take their medicine.
Right.
Yeah.
So, be practical at the same time. And it served me well to listen to the Holy Spirit, even if I didn't quite agree with it at first.
I 100% agree with what Gary is saying, because that's level confusion again. If we fall into the trap of, oh, we can't use what the Course calls magic, which is taking a pill or doing some form of treatment, that would be an unworthy form of denial, falls into that category of denying that we're experiencing ourselves as bodies. It doesn't mean we deny treatment if it can be helpful. So I'm also an advocate of sometimes we need that combination approach. Sometimes we need that. I will go back to say, we can't judge someone's path and what they choose, but sometimes that combination approach helps the mind to heal without fear.
Right.
They need something that their mind decides that will help them.
Yeah.
That could be chemo, right? Radiation, in combination with what you two teach so beautifully. Natural things too, like meditation, exercise, diet. That's the combination approach, right? That's something where you're addressing a holistic, which you two do so beautifully. So you're demonstrating that too, that you doesn't mean you have to deny treatment just because this world is an illusion or the body is an illusion. And I'm an advocate for that, and taking something if it's going to help you function without fear. And maybe, how do we know it's forever? It could be just a temporary.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
And some people get better, maybe some don't. But we can't even judge that person's path. Right? We can't judge we don't know what their script is, what their path, what they're learning.
So I would just say, from a very pragmatic point of view, like, for instance, when Gary is not in pain from severe heartburn, then he's a better person. He's able to write more clearly. He's able to tap into spirit more easily. So why not take care of ourselves so that we can connect with Holy Spirit more easily? Like, I think there's
shine his light into the world.
Agreed.
The illusory, albeit as illusory it may be, but he's serving a lot of people, us included, and you're able to do that better and enjoy your life while doing it. You don't have to suffer.
We don't have to. That's a key point right there too, Gabriela. We don't have to suffer. We don't have to feel holier than thou. We don't have to feel that, we should have this forgiveness thing, figure it out, be perfect. Maybe we don't have it figured out, but maybe that's okay right now. This is where I am right now.
Agreed. And
I'll get there. What? There's no time. We have plenty of time to work out our stuff. We don't have to feel guilty about anything.
Agreed. There's peace of mind. That's peace of mind right there, right? We're just describing that.
So one more quick thing. As you go along, you may find that as you practice, you can heal some things. Maybe you'll have, feels like, I remember I felt like I was getting some arthritis in my knee. Even when I went out for a walk, it would hurt. And so, kind of like working with the Holy Spirit on that. And the guidance was, that pain isn't actually in the body. It just looks that way. There is no body, not really. This whole thing is an illusion. The pain is actually in your mind. Now, it turns out that's a good thing, because if it's in your mind, you can change your mind about it. If it's in the body, you'll be treating the body for the rest of your life. If it's in your mind, it's possible to do something about it. And I started to think of that pain as being not in my body, but in my mind. All pain is a function of guilt. The suffering is actually caused by guilt that we can't see. We're not aware of it. It's unconscious. If we were aware of it, it wouldn't be unconscious. So the catch-22 there is that you're willing to heal something that you can't even see, but you can get the result. And I started to actually experience that pain was not in my body, it was in my mind. And as I realized, you know what, on some level, I thought that I was guilty, but the truth is I'm not.
Right.
Because as the Course in Miracles said, you never really left heaven. You're just having this dream, which means that nothing has happened and you are totally innocent, and that guilt is erroneous. It's not necessary. And so I started to think of myself as being innocent, which is a very good thing to get in touch with, by the way. And as I realized my innocence, the pain went away. So it's possible as you go along and you practice that you'll find that you're able to heal certain things.
Yeah.
And it's just part of a natural progression.
Yeah.
Then as you get better at it, maybe the time will come when you'll be able to heal yourself and others. And of Course in Miracles is pretty specific about that in the manual for teachers, which we don't have time to get into today, but it does get into healing quite extensively.
Wonderful.
Well, this was just wonderful. I'd like to wrap it up
Yes,
now, if
thank
that's
you.
okay, because there's a lot to digest. But this is,
Can I just say, it's like, it's too good, Gary. It's like, I think the mind has a powerful influence on the body. And like, I could give you 2 scientific mechanisms as to how that might have happened, but who knows? It could be when you had peace of mind, there was less inflammation in your body, less arthritis. Also, peace of mind releases endorphins within your brain, so you're not actually experiencing the pain. I'm giving
happy
you
hormones.
I'm giving you
It's true.
I'm giving you physical mediums as to how that may happen, but the fact is it probably happened at what you were describing at the mind level. It just wasn't there, and you released the guilt. So
yeah, I'll just add one thing. Which came first? Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
yes,
Right?
yes.
Did those endorphins get released because of your thoughts, or did you become more peaceful because of the endorphins?
Oh.
And so I think that, I think personally the thoughts come first.
Yes,
but you can't prove it.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm just supporting, like, it doesn't much matter even how that happened. I think it happened at a metaphysical level is my impression.
I think this conversation could use a part 2 sometime.
I agree.
Because
We're
there's
just
so much
getting started. I mean,
there's so much to like.
you should
go
see
over
Rob's
that.
list.
No. I had like all these notes saying, but the course is, the course is, and you guys like, is melted away.
That happens every time, Rob. That happens every time with Cindy and Gary. That's why I just love it. And I love you two being so uncompromised about this and consistently staying so over the years.
Well, and stating the wisdom and the truth, like you're just telling the truth. So
and I'm also happy. Thank you for you as well for bringing up those questions. A lot of the times I find in the course community, we don't ask those basic questions. And yet this is something that personally I struggle with all the time. It doesn't matter how many years I practice the course. And I love, Gary, when you admit to that as well.
Yes,
those are issues that keep reoccurring. The unconscious guilt comes and surfaces, and there you are. There, and I remember saying to myself, there you are, Gabriela, like a puppet. I press that button and there you are. This is how you respond. Where does your mind go?
Welcome to being human like the rest of us.
It's so refreshing to be able to have those basic conversations because they really represent the struggle, the everyday struggle that we all have.
Yeah.
So thank you two so much.
Can I put in a shameless plug for Cancer Pep?
You are terrible.
It's true. So one of the ideas that I thought I tried to introduce is when we take care of ourselves, we can be a greater peace of mind, and we're better able to tap into the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is always there, but if we can take care of ourselves, oftentimes we're able to listen and learn more easily. And so we have a program for people affected by cancer. It's 6 months daily, emails and videos that teaches people how to exercise, diet, meditation, and do everything that really makes a difference in their life. So if you're interested, check out the website, cancerpep.com. Me and my lovely wife do this, the research scientist and the oncologist together.
And we even tap into attitudinal healing.
That's right.
And we talk about our attitudes and how they matter in health and healing.
Jerry Jampolsky wrote a book called Love is Letting Go of Fear. And during our 6-month course, every Sunday, we give about a 5 to 8 minute little teaching around the attitudinal healing that we really been talking about.
It's a very small book. It's actually out of print. You can't even find it anymore. But he talks about things like focus on the light, not the lampshade.
Yeah, of another person. Yeah,
of another person. So it's just very much, it's entirely based on the Course in Miracles. But those principles are just fantastic. They're so practical.
Yeah,
right.
I love this analogy that Cindy uses in her book that she just mentioned. When the clouds come out and block the sun, we don't get angry at the clouds.
Right.
We just accept it. So well, that's what happens, It's just,
Right?
It's a cloudy day.
Yeah.
the sun is still there.
Yeah.
Okay?
Exactly.
So that's how we should think of people.
Can I read just a paragraph?
Absolutely.
Yes,
So that-
please.
That's based.
I
This is
love
it's a metaphor for understanding the truth.
Yeah.
The sun is like a metaphor for who we all really are. The light of the world that lightens up the world. In the course, light means truth. In the following metaphor, the sun, as we experience it here on earth, is a constant in the sense that it consistently shines. We know that its shining brilliance is something we can always count on. The sun is the source of all life on the level of the world, of form, because we believe that it sustains us, just as God is the source of all life, period. The clouds that obscure the sun from time to time are like a metaphor for the unconscious guilt in our minds, obscuring the truth of who we are as part of God. Just as we know that the clouds only obscure the sun temporarily, our unconscious guilt also obscures the truth of who we are temporarily. It doesn't change the truth, just as the clouds obscuring the sun don't change the fact that the sun always shines. We don't condemn or get angry at the clouds for coming out because we know that it's only a block to the sun's presence and that the sun will continue shining above the clouds. So the sun remains unaffected by what is outside of it.
Yeah.
So the metaphor for that is that God is the ultimate sun, right?
Yes.
The ultimate, in other
Yes.
words, just because we choose sometimes to block it out, the truth consistently and eternally is always there and shines, and it's literally a part of us, and we can choose it. Heaven is now.
Yes, heaven
Choose
is
it
now.
anytime we want.
And we endorse your books, both yours and Gary's, to cancer patients, because really, how can health happen without healing your mind? I mean, really, we cannot have a program that is holistic without talking about the mind and the role of the mind in health and healing. It just cannot be.
I also want to thank, I know Gary would agree, you both for, being such lights also, and then the field that you're in and the quality of care that you give our brothers and sisters, as I like to call them. We are all patients in some ways. I mean, but I like to say you both are doing wonderful, wonderful work in your field by addressing all levels, and really, really the care and the compassion really comes through your work. And I think that in a way is probably one of the most important things, is that kindness and compassion.
Agreed.
And you're really listening to people, and you care, and that shines through. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
See, to me, that's a powerful combination. Doctors who also know about A Course in Miracles, that's a winning combination, in my opinion. Yeah. Not that every doctor has to know about A Course in Miracles, but when you do and you really understand what it's saying, I think it is just a great match.
Makes sense.
Because you're exposed to even more
about
another level. That's all. Just about
life and death. Yeah.
Reality.
Exactly. And to see that it's just impermanent. And so, and
the fact that you're choosing to focus on the love, not that you don't notice what's going on, but you're focusing though on the love behind, and which is very beautiful and important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you too. I hope that we can twist your hands and do this again, because I think there's more to talk. And the workbook. Wonderful. We look forward to that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Really.
Thanks for organizing this. Thank you.
Blessings.
And this concludes our interview with Cindy and Gary Renard. To learn more about their work, please visit cindylora.com and garyrenard.com. To learn more about the work that Rob and I have been conducting, please visit our website at cancerpep.com. Thank you for listening. Until next time, be well and take care of yourselves.